So, hi, everybody. I am really, really delighted to be introducing a very dear friend and someone that I really respect in the world of business and bringing heart into business, Mark Silver. If you don't know me, I'm Jen Hoffman. I have been writing about spiritual journeys on my blog for 20, almost 20 years, 25, 15 years. And Mark was really instrumental in me finding my voice around building a business around the things that I love and want to bring into the world with integrity, with heart, with thoughtfulness, and a real deep spiritual foundation. And this is kind of at odds in my experience with the traditional business approach to sales and the traditional business approach to marketing. So I'm really, really delighted that Mark's here to talk about how we can bring those kinds of qualities into our book business, into our publishing experience, into having conversations with potential readers in virtual spaces and in person. So thank you so much for spending the time with us, Mark.
Yeah, I'm delighted to be here, and I'm delighted especially like talking about writing and authors. I've self-published a bunch of books over the years, and then I've just had my official. A self-published is just as official. It's just as official. But I
Yes.
had a publisher published book that came out in October, and yeah, and
Congratulations.
thank you. So I'm just been it's it's funny, this entire business has been built through writing and content creation. So it's just something that's, near and dear to my heart for a lot of different reasons.
Yes. Yes. Well, you're in the right place with our community. So thank you.
Yeah.
So one of the things I wanted to ask you, I came to your work, like I said, 15 years ago, looking for ways to keep my heart aligned while I was learning to grow a business. And a lot of authors don't think about the fact that they have a business, but we really do. And one of the things I really appreciated is that you kind of talk about three ways to make selling easier, and those are structure, preparation, and heart. And I wanted to have you just spend a little time talking about what those are like in sales conversations and also how they might be different from what we normally expect sales conversations to be like.
Yeah. And I guess I want to start with some empathy for authors because, in my lifetime, we've really watched the publishing industry change in huge ways. And authors, I think, can be forgiven for not thinking that they have or need a business because you didn't used to need to. It was just a different thing. And now, um, even traditional publishers, it's like friends of mine that I know who have been best-selling authors who have, been published many times. And as well as people I know who are new, publishers are looking for authors with platforms or authors that can participate in the marketing and the selling of the book. And it's not really fair, but it's what it is. And so, yeah. So I guess I wanted to start with just that bit of empathy and that, you know, embracing some of these practices in business like marketing and selling it can be done beautifully. It can be done beautifully, and a lot of it can be done very much in alignment with the same kind of energy that you bring to writing the book itself. So, um, yeah. So I wanted to say that, and now if I can get you to repeat the question.
Yeah,
So
yeah,
after,
yeah. I think a lot of us, our hands start to get really sweaty and we start to lose our voice and our chests get tight because it's like, how am I going to talk to this person? How am I going to convince somebody to buy my book? And I
mm,
personally get really overwhelmed. It's like, how can I even talk about how useful this is or how meaningful it is when it's my heart and soul? So I
yeah,
love you bring in these three pieces of structure, preparation, and heart.
yeah. So I think one of the first things to understand before getting to heart and before getting to um, preparation is understanding the structure that we're approaching. I think that a lot of people, because of um, really terrible experiences of being sold to, misunderstand the basic structure that's involved in selling when it's done in a healthy way. And I'll tell a short story that I didn't realize why I was naturally good at selling until I had been good at selling, and then I came back and go, well, like, what's going on? And then I realized I was a paramedic for 8 years, and before that I was an EMT. It was a previous career to all of this, and I was in a very busy system in the San Francisco Bay Area, and um, and I got really good at doing rapid assessments with people while caring for them, while helping them feel safe. That's sales. Sales is really assessment. You're not trying to sell the book, or whatever it is that you're selling. You're trying to discover what is it that's going on with them? What is it that they need? And is what you have an answer to that, appropriate to that? Does it land, for them? Is it going to support them or entertain them or nourish them in some way? And so understanding that basic structure, that it's an assessment, and there's more to it than that, but at its heart, it's really, oh, tell me about what's going on with you. Tell me about, what your relationship is. It depends. If it's nonfiction, what's the topic you're writing about? If it's fiction, what's the story supposed to be giving to the audience? What is it that it's, what's the redemption arc, or what's the, what's happening with the characters, and how does that serve people? And I think that that's like, if you have that understanding that, oh, this is an assessment, and then the preparation has so much to do with understanding that. Like, so many times people come to writing as an artistic expression, right? Naturally enough, of course it is. um, I've always seen business as an intersection between the entrepreneur and the artist. And so the entrepreneur is looking out into the world and seeing, what are people struggling with? What can I do to help people who are struggling in some way, or facing something, or needing something? And the artist is looking like, what is going on in my soul? What's going on in my being that needs to be expressed? And when you can find an alignment between what people are needing and what you're expressing, then that's where the magic happens. And so some of the preparation, especially if you're on the more artistic side, is to begin to identify, who am I writing for? What is the audience? What is it that, and you go, if you're going to do a book proposal for a publisher, or even just getting super clear on your own self-publishing strategy, which usually should involve writing some version of a book proposal, because it can be so clarifying. That's a wonderful preparation, because then you know what you're offering from their perspective, from the reader's perspective, not just from your perspective. And so when you go, okay, I'm coming to this as an assessment, I know what my offer is, I know what the book is bringing and the things that it's bringing. And then it becomes a matter of the heart. And the preparation in the heart, these are all broad strokes, of course, it's like we can go deeper into any of these, but the preparation of the heart, I think, is first acknowledging the legitimate needs. We label legitimate needs as neediness in a pejorative way, which feels terrible. But the truth is that we're all needy. We all have needs, and they're legitimate. Like, it's a legitimate need to want your book out in the world. It's a legitimate need, to want to be supported and to receive love and to receive care and to receive money, and to receive support, provision. And so if we can identify those needs and acknowledge them and make space for that, one of the things that we can then start to do is shift that neediness to desire. Okay, I'm needy, and I can, and it's okay to receive love, and it's okay to receive support, and it's okay to receive provision. And this one person or this audience in front of me is not, necessarily, like, I don't have to get it just from them. There's so many different sources, including accessing it internally in your own heart. And then you can then find the desire, like, oh my goodness, I want these people to get what this book is bringing. I want them to fly. I want them to be nourished. I want to see the enjoyment, or the insights or the healing or whatever it is, or the, just the entertainment, the joy, um, and bringing that. And so there's that shift where the desire to give to people can help to layer on top of the needs that are being met in our own heart. I don't know if that's a little too esoteric or if it's too big a concept, because it's like a very brief, when we
Yeah.
teach this in our course, we of course go in depth into these concepts, but it's magical. It's a magical process.
And I've experienced it having taken some of your classes over the years. It's one of the things, as you're describing this, one of the things that comes up for me is as a writer, I know that eventually we are all asked to discern for ourselves who our target reader is. Who are they? What are their values? How old are they? Where do they live? What have they experienced in life? Because that's how you choose what voice you're writing in. That's how you choose how sophisticated your vocabulary is, or how you describe an issue. And what I'm hearing you say is that that process that many of us go through is relevant also then to how we might talk to people or who we might be talking to when it's time to start selling the book or even getting ready to sell whatever it is we've written, whether it's a book or an e-zine or whatever it is. Um, and I'm also hearing that instead of it coming from a place of only strategy, which many of us are familiar with and are very resistant to, it's about getting to the place where what's coming from the heart.
Hmm.
I think that's what you're saying. And what's coming from the
Yeah.
heart is a lot easier to talk about with potential readers than it is to talk about, oh, these are the main plot points, or, this is who the publisher is, or whatever the kind of more superfluous stuff. It sounds like it's about coming from the heart. And that's what I'm hearing.
Yeah. Well, and it's really um, a powerful understanding. People don't necessarily, I mean, this is true whether you're selling services, selling book, or selling whatever. It's like there is this mistake that happens where people ask, well, what's the book about? And they think that, and you tend to think, oh, they're asking for a detailed plot description, right? And I mean, of course people want to know, it's like you don't want to ignore that, but they don't want to be led through it as if they're going to be an editor or they're going to be a writer also. you know um I was there's an author, Alexis Hall, who is a genderqueer uh, author of romance novels, queer romance novels, and I'd read enough kind of dystopian young adult, fantasy and science fiction. I'm like, I need something with a little bit more joy, and people had recommended this author, Alexis Hall, to me, and um, I didn't need a detailed plot analysis. It's like people were describing the work as like, it's delightful and it's really fun and it's queer and it's romance and it's like there's this like, oh my God, there's so much enjoyment and fun. And then the first book I've got was like, oh, it's about this bisexual woman who's in like a fictional version of the Great British Bake Off, and I'm like, I'm in, I'm in. Like I didn't have to know a lot about it. Um, to know that I wanted to be taken on this story. And I was looking for something that had some delight and some joy and that reflected uh, a world that was very familiar to me, and it was just very comforting to read the book and enjoyable. And I'm like, I've been through so many of Alexis's books at this point. Um, and it was really like what sold me was like, what is the book giving? Like,
Yes.
what is the book giving to me? Not what is the details of the story, because the details of the story, can be, like we see the same stories over and over and over again, right? Just the
Mhm.
details are different because we're wired for story. It doesn't matter to us. We can read the same stories over and over again, you know. And but what's the quality? What is it? How is it going to nourish me? How is what kind of delicious meal am I taking in? And I
Yeah.
just, and I think that if we can understand our books from that perspective, it makes a way different pitch, to the audience, way different invitation.
Because you're actually, what I'm hearing you describe is a book could be summarized in what emotional states the reader will experience. You'll laugh, you'll cry, you'll be inspired, you're going to be challenged to think about things in a new way. Like we're all looking for something of an emotional experience, and books give us that. And if we're discerning, we're curious, or we're thoughtful about this as
Mhm.
writers, we can either come up with those emotions on our own, or we can ask our early readers to say, how did you feel while you were reading this? Because you can use that in your marketing. That's the thing that early readers of the memoir that I'm currently working on, people have said to me, Jen, it's so funny. You're talking about such deep spiritual ideas, and yet it's so hilarious, and it just makes you want to keep reading. That's, okay,
Mhm.
great. I'm doing something right and I didn't even know it. So sometimes I
Yes.
think our early readers can tell us what's going well, and what that emotional journey is that we're taking our readers on. Because all
Yes.
of us are longing for those deep experiences. We're all looking for opportunities to laugh and be thoughtful
Mhm.
and grow. A lot of us are. So
Right.
um,
And I think that and the combination of some details from the plot
mhm,
and this emotional experience is what makes it for a unique pitch,
mhm,
and so if you were speaking to an audience,
mhm,
and you say, if you've been wrestling with really profound spiritual issues and they just seem really heavy, and you need some lightness to be able to really get at them and be able to digest them and take them on, and you're willing to, laugh during the spiritual journey so that the the depth can really land home, and you want to hear about uh, all of the shoes I walked through. I'm just, I'm gleaning, I'm guessing, from your, from, walking a pilgrim. And you've ever wondered, like, what's the actual experience of like walking on a pilgrimage for days and days and days
mhm,
and laughing during it? Like,
mhm.
this is, like one of the readers said, they just kept wanting to keep reading because they kept coming to surprising places where they would find themselves laughing.
Mhm,
You
mhm,
know, what you didn't tell anything. I didn't say anything about
mhm.
the plot because I don't know the book. I know a little bit of
Right,
your story because we know each
right,
other,
right,
right? I
right.
know, but it's like you don't have to tell the plot at all. But it's like, oh
Exactly.
wow, that's such a compelling
Mhm,
way to talk about a book, and it's like, oh yeah, all right, all right.
mhm,
So,
mhm.
um, wanting to, and in that pitch, I don't know if you could feel it in my voice, but it's like I'm wanting something for the reader,
Yes.
right? And that's what I'm starting to express in talking about the book. I'm wanting something for the reader.
Mhm.
I'm not needing something from the reader. And
Yes.
this is a very this is one of the shifts in selling that makes a huge difference in how it lands.
Yeah. 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 What a difference that makes.
Mhm.
I was going to ask you about um, the reality that you mentioned earlier about authors needing to use social platforms, blogging, content generation in order to connect with their potential readers. And I know, I'm part of a community. We have very strong feelings about this and the unjustness of it. We're already writing for a living. Now we have to write some more. Um, but one of the things that I know is that really that's often where our readers are, and that's how people buy books anymore, is through online interfaces. The odds that people are going to walk into a bookstore and find my particular book or someone else's particular book are
Mhm.
low.
Right.
So it's kind of the Wild West out there, but we can reach a lot more people if we're using online spaces. And so, to those of you that are watching and listening here, that you may not be on board yet with that approach, but some of us are, and finding it useful. But what I'm curious about, Mark, is that you're talking about these sales conversations where we bring that system and we bring that heart into the conversation. How do you imagine that looking in an online space where we're not sitting face to face, we're not at a
Mhm.
book fair where we have our book in front of us and people are asking us to sign and describe it to them? It seems
Right.
much more detached. And I was curious if you have thoughts about what does that sacred conversation, that sacred sales conversation look like?
Yeah. So I want to again give empathy to people who are like, eh, with that, because there are a lot of problems with social media and we have to acknowledge them and face them. It's like blah. At the same time, there are so many gifts to social media. I mean, you and I have been able to stay connected, and there's so many wonderful people I've been managed to stay connected because of social media. There's definitely a blessing in it as well. And I think that, first of all, we can have real connections. I mean, if you think, I think a lot of people get caught in thinking, oh, it's social media and I'm not interacting with, there's profiles, but I'm not interacting with people. But I like to remember that on the other side of every profile, there's a heart, there's people
Mm,
there,
yeah.
and I'll tell you, I hope Alexis Hall gets a bump in their book sales. But it's like I have not had in-depth interactions with Alexis um, on social media. It wouldn't be appropriate. I don't know them well. They've got a ton of fans. I wouldn't expect them. It wouldn't be sustainable to have long in-depth. But I saw them there, and they was like they reacted with one of my comments, and I
Mhm,
and I see them pop up, and there's like a real person there. It's
mhm,
I was always I was always I've spent my share of money at bookstores just buying books kind of randomly. Not randomly, you look at them, but had I've also become a little bit more careful because I've been disappointed, buying books and like not getting a sense from the jacket cover it's like I often try to read the first few pages just to see if I'm caught. But it's like I just I to be able to interact and to see what kind of person is behind the writing, I don't know, it fulfills a kind of connection piece. I get familiar and I can cheer them on. If I can see um, their a little bits of their content, samples of their content, um, it feels good. Like you don't necessarily have to create additional content. You can share bits. It's like with my book, I've been taking little pieces of it, quotes from it, and creating memes or whatever, and
mhm,
putting it out there for people to taste. I think that we can, um, build up a following. Like if we're wanting to build up a following based on our writing,
mhm,
what better way to get real time feedback? I've tried to get sales numbers from my publisher and they are not like, they come out quarterly or by whatever, every 3 months, 6 months. They're not in real time. They're not, and their book sales, they don't have, there's no information on people who might be interested but haven't purchased yet. But
mhm,
if I have even a small following on social media, I'm getting real time feedback on whether my ideas are landing, whether my
mhm,
content is hitting, whether,
mhm,
I'm getting, uh, I'm also getting quotes from people and going, oh wow, I really love that. And it's like, oh
mhm,
wow, I can use that, you know, like that, like, you get this, like that quote when I made up that pitch for you earlier, and we used a
mhm,
quote from from an early reader.
mhm,
If you had a stream of those, you
mhm,
know, it's so helpful. And I also say that if you're self-publishing, if you can sell, if you can embrace this prospect, this process of engaging people with your writing, which is what you're wanting to do anyway, you make so much more money from each book sale than you do
mhm.
through a publisher, you know. Um,
Yeah, because the fact
I,
is that we're never going to really recoup the amount of blood, sweat, and tears that go into every single page. But to have systems where the likelihood is greater, where we're putting that out there in front of people in a way that they can connect with. Personally, I find social media really useful for that because stuff that I quote some of the writing I do right now gets put into quotes and little memes, and people click it and they like it and they share it, and it's spreading some good in the world, which always makes me feel really good. And then it's like the people that resonate with that want to
Mhm.
find out how to do more with that person. If you find an author that's really got the energy that you really like, then you want
Mhm.
more with them. We all can relate to the authors we absolutely adore, that we would
Right.
love to have. Oh, they came out with a new book. Oh my God, I want it because I already know what their voice is. I already know how they are on social media.
Right. Well, and I want to say that you can recoup. Like there was someone I was in community with a few years ago, um, Serena Lindahl, who has written a bunch of fiction books that she's self-published, and I know that she was making a living selling her fiction self-published through Amazon. I'm not talking like coffee money or like occasional trip to the grocery store. I mean like money. And she had built up a following of fans who really loved her work. And I'll tell you, there's something that happens because not only are her stories imaginative and fun to read, you can look her up, Serena, and then Lindahl is Lindahl. She's a wonderful person, and she's uh, but I'll tell you that there's also I, I feel funny saying this because I don't want it to reflect on her writing because her writing's really good. She's a really good writer. But when you know somebody and you're a fan, there's forgiveness. You know, if there's like, if you're buying like a nameless author or somebody you don't know or just somebody who's already famous, it's like you can bring a more critical eye. But if you know someone and you have a sense of who they are, there's a forgiveness there. And I think that that's incredibly powerful, especially for newer authors. I've been writing for like 30 plus years, and I like to think that my writing has gotten pretty darn good at this point, but it wasn't 20 years ago, 25 years ago, whenever. And I read some of my early stuff and I'm like, all right, yeah, I was young. That's all right. And uh,
We've all been there,
but
Mark.
but no, of course we've all been there, and we all start somewhere. But if you're like building up a fan base and you're starting to put out your first books, how wonderful to have people that are truly fans who like get a sense of who you are personally and what your writing process is like and what the samples are. And they're like, wow, I really like this person, and this book is good enough that I'm cheering them on so that they can continue to get better in their craft instead of putting out a book that's not quite perfect because it's your first book and and then it doesn't sell and then it's like we have to like how else do you get good at anything you know so I think that there is a very positive side to social media if it's used in an authentic and vulnerable way.
Yeah. And to see it as part of that conversation
Mhm.
with our beloved reader, whoever
Mhm.
that is, rather than just shouting into the void, because it's not. One of the stories I love about an author I really admire is Elizabeth Gilbert, who's famous for
Mhm.
Eat, Pray, Love. She's written myriad other books, but she sat down and wrote that book to a single friend. The entire voice and every story she told in that book is to one specific person.
Yes.
And I use that a lot when I sit down and I write social media content. It's like, oh God, I have to be brilliant now. I don't. I just have to think of that one beloved reader who I really, really connect with from the heart. It's usually someone I already know. And I write my content to her. And it comes from a completely different place, much more resonant, much more authentic and loving than it would if it were, me trying to be brilliant.
It's
I,
such an
I
important
might hit
point.
that 2 days out of a month. So
Well, I mean, this is something I actually just made a video about that for our audience. It's like
yeah.
don't create content for a crowd.
Mm-hmm.
It's like no matter how
Mm-hmm.
many people, it's like no matter because of the nature of screens, no matter how many people are seeing something, the person who's experienced it is not sitting in a room with a bunch of people around. They're alone with your
Exactly.
words. And this is a very intimate thing. Email is can be a very intimate medium.
Mm-hmm.
Um, the same with book and even with social media. People, I think, have more of a sense of it being like in public in social media. But
Hmm.
if you can remember as a writer that you're connecting with just one person,
Hmm.
then each person gets to experience the immediacy of that. And I think it's much more likely to impact people
Yeah.
and to go somewhere.
Yeah. And then the moment that your book launches, or you've got a pre-launch, or you have an offer coming out, people who connect with that ethos, that way of being, are going
Yeah.
to want to buy. And that's the thing that's so beautiful and so organic. I know your time's limited, so I don't want to take up too much time here, but I I want to tell everybody that's been watching this video that I took a class with Mark. Gosh, it has to have been 15 years ago. Um, that is called Sacred Selling.
It
And
might have been longer than
is it longer? I
that.
mean, yeah, it really could have been. It could have been 18, something like, I mean, it's sometimes, after you turn 35, time
I
just
know.
stops. We don't even keep track anymore.
I know, 35, 20 years ago, man. So,
We had, of course, the accordion of the pandemic, so time didn't exist at all during that time period.
right,
But
right.
what I wanted to say is that I took that class with you all those years ago, and even today, the concepts that I learned in it show up almost every single day. Whether
Mm,
I'm buying produce from the lady who sells lemons down the road, or whether I'm offering a class, I bring that heart that you talked about, the systems that you talked about, to those conversations. And I did not like having sales conversations. It stressed me out. I felt like I was trying to convince people of something that they didn't want to do, and I was trying to manipulate them. It was a horrible feeling. And when I found that class and I found your work, it suddenly the words came out with another person who might be interested in what I did without seeming smarmy, without feeling like a car salesman. Like it was just this authentic, I was myself with my full heart, my full presence. And some people wanted to buy what I had to sell, and some people didn't, but they left the conversation feeling better than they did when they walked in. And that's something I took from you, Mark, is that idea that whether people buy your book or not, whether they buy what you're selling or not, that conversation can be where they experience joy, where they experience connection, where they experience feeling seen.
mm,
And maybe they'll be ready at a different time. So that I just want to thank you for that because it's been so profound and so profoundly effective in my life.
mm. You're so welcome. It's so beautiful. Those teachings, the combination of the spiritual Sufi teachings that I got from my teachers with this structure around how to have a sales conversation has just been so healing for me and for so many people. And I also want to highlight, because I think it's absolutely true, like that's a piece we want to have, is we want to be doing good in the world regardless of what the outcome is. And I want to say that some people were buying from you, like when you when you have this kind of enjoyment and connection and ease in the sales conversation. um, what happens a lot in sales is that if people are already close enough to be hearing from you and in that conversation or connected in some way, they're already leaning in. Like, we're not talking about accosting strangers on the street saying, buy my thing. Like, we're talking about people that are already kind of leaning in. And the sad fact is that people's discomfort with sales and having taken in toxic ways of approaching sales actually push those people away. People who probably would easily have said yes if they just felt safe enough to. And when you learn sacred selling, when you learn a heart centered way of approaching and being with the sales conversation, you stop boring people, stop pushing people away. And the people that were going to buy actually do instead of disappearing. And the people who were kind of on the fence, but were like had an open ear and an open heart, lean in and go, oh yeah, 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 please, yes. And and it's not unusual. One of the things that I love hearing, like when we hear from people who are taking the course is that during the course, they're practicing it and they're putting the things into place incomplete. They haven't even finished the course and they're already starting to get people saying yes and getting paid. And I so want people who are bringing such beauty to the world to get paid instead of all this kind of smarmy, gross, toxic business, like the business world that sucks so much of the money. Some of that money
Yeah,
needs to go to the good people, and that's what I'd
yeah.
really like to see.
Or a garage full of books because nobody wants to
Yes.
sell, nobody wants to do that. There's a happy medium, and I can't say how grateful I am for that insight, and I use it all the time.
Mm.
And that's what I wanted to just why I wanted to have us have this conversation and share this with the folks that I know in the writing community because I'm super jazzed that you've got this very same class coming up. And I wanted to know if you could talk to us a little bit about that and what people would need to know if they wanted to be involved.
Yeah. It starts May 14th and runs 6 weeks, which sometimes the question comes up like a sales conversation is what, 20 minutes, 30 minutes, 45 minutes? Why spend 6 weeks? And, there's a lot going on in these conversations. There's a lot of healing that we do, kind of clearing and being in a healthy way with our neediness. There's a lot of preparation that makes it so easy, and there's a lot of understanding the structure. When you back up and you look at each of the little pieces, there's so many times I know when somebody's in that kind of a situation where it seems to be going well and then the energy goes off. What happened?
Mhm.
What happened? Why did it feel good and now it feels off? Or why did it seem to feel good but then suddenly they seem like they're bored or they disappear, or what's going on? And when we can look at this really closely, what happens is that the learning goes in really deep and we can kind of catch those places where people get caught, just get caught, and it turns just a little bit. Um, there's a lot of practical teaching that's super easy to take in, and there's a lot of healing and emotional support along the way. Um, and it's also just super easy to take in this format. It's not overwhelming. All of our lives are very busy. And so if you take it in and you practice a little bit, and then you take in the next little bit and you practice a little bit, people get really good. And like I said, people start to see, it's not uncommon for people to, I'm not going to make promises like that because everybody has different experiences. It's a
Mhm.
class and depends so much, but it's like, it's not uncommon for me to hear about people going, oh yeah, it's like it's going easier and it's going more smoothly, and I'm getting sales and I'm not feeling nervous or scared or intimidated anymore. I'm feeling really at ease. And one of the probably the most joyful things is that it applies to all kinds of relationships. We are not selling, it's like it's not about like selling in a normal, either friendship or intimate relationship, but the ways that we bring in insights around how to have healthy communication around, when people have different ideas or different needs or just how to communicate. It's in some ways it's a basic communication class. I mean, my wife Holly, that we've been together for a long time, going on 30 years, and she, when we first started to teach this course, she goes, "Oh my God, we could totally teach this for like couples communication." And then I was hearing that people were using these same things, the same principles in other contexts that have been incredible healing. So it's anyway, I get enthusiastic about this course because it's so beautiful and it's so healing and it's so practical, and it's pay from the heart, you know,
Yeah, tell
in
us
terms of
about that.
pricing. Um, so pay from the heart is a structure that we came up with because we wanted to, our economic system is just so unjust, and we need to be supported, and other people need to be supported. Our clients need to be supported. And so we're really clear about what our needs are, and we put them out there, and then we trust our clients to like take that in and to make choices. And there's a whole description on the sales page about what that looks like so that it's not sticky and it's not weird. And um, but we get adequately supported, and people can choose a price that is collaborative with us. um, and I love that. I love that sense of collaboration, and that people can go, oh gosh, last thing I want to see is someone causing themselves harm to try to access something. It's one thing to stretch. Sometimes we stretch to get something good that we want. Um, but there's a difference between stretching and causing harm. And that's what Pay from the Heart is trying to walk.
And say with 100% confidence that what I spent in that class, I recouped within a year. Easily, easily.
That's
Because
awesome.
those conversations became so much easier and
Yeah.
natural and organic. And it was me. It was me showing up instead of someone I thought I was supposed to be.
Yeah.
So yeah. So I hope folks that are listening or watching will take some time to go over to Mark's website. I'm going to make sure that I include a link to the course that Mark is teaching and just his socials and website as well. But Mark, if you have any final last words you want to share, I'm happy to hear those too.
I just want people to be kind to themselves. Like, business has been done so miserably in our culture that, if you have issues with business, like, I don't want anyone to have to get over those issues. Like, there's wisdom in having that kind of reaction. And I hate to see people who have really beautiful messages, really beautiful things that they've done, turn away from business entirely. And I'd love for them to lean in and go, is love available even here? Is there a pathway of integrity, rather than just throwing everything away and not getting your books out there, not getting your good work out there in the world?
Thank you for that. Well, thank you so much for being here, Mark, for sharing you and sharing your expertise and your heart with us for almost 45 minutes. I really hope that folks give that a look. And if you want to reach out to me, if you have any questions, feel free. But I think you're going to find everything that you need and answers about the class that's coming up on the link that I'll send you for Sacred Selling. So thank you so much for your time, Mark.
Thank you so much, Jen. I really
Such a treat to
appreciate
spend
you.
time with you.
Yeah, I know. I'm glad you're in the world and all the things you're doing.
Likewise. You take good care and we'll talk soon.
Excellent.
Bye for now.